In the bitter winter of 1873, whispers spread through Milwaukee's German immigrant community about an eerie little girl named Emma Richter. Only 11 years old, pale and quiet. She could tell the exact day of the week for any date in history, within seconds repeat entire conversations, word for word after hearing them once, and recall the precise number of steps between any two buildings in her neighborhood. What modern science might call an extraordinary neurological gift is in 1873 seen as either a divine blessing or a sign of something unnatural. And when Emma began using her strange abilities to reveal long-buried secrets, predict fatal accidents, and describe details of crimes no living witness should know, admiration turned swiftly into fear. By the time spring arrived, 3 men were dead, a family had vanished into the night, and Emma herself disappeared, leaving behind only a small leather journal crammed with undeciphered numbers. Life in Milwaukee's German Quarter had seemed simple enough, a bustling enclave of breweries, beer gardens, and wooden homes where nearly 8,000 immigrants recreated a slice of Bavaria on the edge of Lake Michigan. Emma's parents, Hinrich and Greta, had come from Bavaria in 1861 with hopes of a better life, and their baby girl was born premature on the rough Atlantic crossing. Though frail, she grew into a quiet, watchful child whose enormous gray eyes missed nothing. She rarely cried, preferring to sit silently and observe. By 4, she could mimic conversations from days earlier, with perfect tone and accent count every stitch in her mother's embroidery, every step to the bakery, and every tick of the brewery whistles. Numbers, patterns, and rhythms fascinated her, and she absorbed mathematics with an unnatural speed. At first, the community regarded her with cautious pride, though some whispered of curses and old Bavarian superstitions. Then came the savage winter of 1872, a season so cold, Lake Michigan froze, and as isolation deepened, Emma's gift darkened. Watching from the kitchen window, she began noticing patterns in people, not just in numbers. She tracked Mr. Kruger's steps to the brewery 247 each day, except Wednesdays when he took 284, and noticed how Mrs. Fisher changed the order of her laundry depending on her husband's work schedule. At first, these seemed like harmless quirks until Emma began stating her findings in a way that chilled those around her. One gray February morning in 1873, while calmly eating breakfast, she looked up and said, "Mr. Dietrich will not come home from the brewery today. He will die at exactly 14 minutes past 2. Her mother froze, horrified. But Emma explained in a calm, matter-of-fact tone that she had been counting his steps and tracking his drinking for 17 days. He had been drinking from a small brown bottle, and the previous day his intake tripled. His walk showed 251 steps instead of 244. And when a person's pattern shifts by more than 10%, something tragic happens within 72 hours. Mr. Dietrich's pattern had shifted by 12%. Her parents, stunned, tried to silence her, but neither could shake the dread her words planted as the Wisconsin winter pressed in. The Richter family had long grown used to their daughter's strange observations, but her prediction about Mr. Dietrich felt different, darker, and far more precise than anything she had ever said before. That very afternoon, at exactly 14 minutes past 2, Jan Dietrich collapsed in the brewery's malt room, dead from heart failure caused by years of drinking. The men who found him said he had been unsteady and anxious for weeks, drinking far more than usual. But none could shake the chill that came from knowing Emma's prediction had been accurate to the minute. Word spread through Milwaukee's German Quarter as fast as smoke on a cold wind, And soon every whispered conversation came back to the pale girl with the gray, unblinking eyes who watched everything from behind her kitchen window. Even Father Caller, who had once called her gift divine, began to look troubled. After Mass, when Heinrich sought his advice, the priest's warm Bavarian voice carried a note of unease as he suggested Emma should spend less time staring at the world and more time in prayer, for a gift not tempered by God could easily be twisted by darker forces. That evening, Heinrich asked Emma directly how she could possibly have known. The child met his gaze calm and precise and explained that she had seen Mr. Dietrich's drinking increase by 37% over 17 days. His food intake dropped by 20%, and from those variables, she calculated exactly when his heart would fail, based on his age and condition. When Heinrich demanded to know how she had these details, she answered in the same even tone I watch. "I count, I remember. Would you like me to tell you about the others?" Horrified, he told her no, and as he tucked her into bed that night, with the February snow muffling every sound outside, he felt as though his family now stood at the edge of a shadow far deeper than a child's innocent fascination with numbers. After Dietrich's death, the atmosphere in the German quarter changed. Neighbors who had once smiled at the Richters now whispered and crossed the street. And Emma, once their quiet pride, became a source of dread, even within her own home. Day after day, she sat at the kitchen window, gray eyes moving from one neighbor to the next, silently collecting patterns. Other children played in the snow, but Emma preferred her lonely vigil, counting the steps of every passer-by and watching lives unfold like clockwork. Greta began to notice the things her daughter said, becoming sharper stranger. One morning, without looking up from buttering her bread, Emma announced that Mrs. Weber had been secretly visiting Mr. Kellner every Tuesday for 6 weeks, because instead of taking 349 steps to her sister's house, she took 127 steps in the opposite direction. The same quiet voice explained that the Schneiders were burying objects in their garden every Sunday, placing them exactly 73 centimeters apart in a grid, believing no one would see. When Greta asked how she knew these things, Emma simply said, "People think they are secret, but they follow patterns like numbers, and I see everything." That night, Heinrich confessed to his wife that he feared their daughter's gift was turning into something unnatural. Greta, already shaken by the way neighbors stared and by Father Caller's sudden distance, could only whisper that she was frightened of what would happen if Emma kept speaking. 3 days later, those fears deepened when Emma, while peeling potatoes for supper, stopped, raised her head, and calmly announced, "Tomorrow at 11 in the morning, Mr. Weber will find his wife with Mr. Kellner in the brewery office, and there will be violence." Greta's knife clattered to the table, but Emma went on in the same detached tone, explaining that Mrs. Weber had been arriving 7 minutes earlier each week, that Mr. Kellner had been staying 33 minutes later each day, and that Mr. Weber's horse was developing a limp that would bring him home 47 minutes early tomorrow. The alignment of these 3 variables, she said, made discovery inevitable. Standing in the doorway, Heinrich felt the same chill he had known on the day of Dietrich's death, but this time it was stronger, and it did not fade. Emma's predictions were no longer just eerie observations. They were glimpses of the future delivered with terrifying precision. When her father asked how she could possibly know about Mr. Weber's horse, she replied without hesitation that she had been counting its steps each day, noting that by March 1st, the animal favored its right legs 53% of the time, and that by today it was 68%, which meant by tomorrow, the lameness would delay Weber's route by exactly 47 minutes and cause him to return home early. The next day unfolded exactly as Emma said it would. Wilhelm Weber discovered his wife in a compromising situation with brewery owner Ernst Kellner. A violent confrontation followed, and the scandal that erupted consumed the German quarter. What unsettled the community even more than the affair itself was that an 11-year-old girl had predicted every moment of it. After that, there was no escaping the whispers. Former friends turned away. Children were warned to keep their distance. Shopkeepers served the family in cold silence, and Heinrich, standing at the brewery, suffered especially since Kellner made it clear that the Richters were no longer welcome. But Emma, unbothered by the hostility, retreated deeper into her calculations, filling a leather-bound journal with columns of numbers, maps of the neighborhood, and patterns only she understood. As spring approached, their once bustling community felt hostile, and Heinrich even considered leaving Milwaukee to escape the suffocating fear that surrounded their daughter. Yet Emma's work only intensified. Her notes had become complex, charting behaviors and predicting events that seemed far beyond a child's reach. Curiosity finally led Dr. Friedrich Müller, the neighborhood physician, to examine her. Unlike the neighbors, he saw no witchcraft, only a mind, unlike any he had ever encountered. In his office above the pharmacy on a rainy Thursday, Emma answered his questions with perfect accuracy, explaining in calm, precise tones that she observed patterns and, given enough data points, could calculate what people would do next. When asked for an example, she opened her journal and revealed that for 8 weeks, Mrs. Brennan had gone to the church rectory every Tuesday and Friday at exactly 3:15, staying for precisely 43 minutes while Father Kerr's patterns. Extra candles, extra wine, longer prayers shifted in perfect correlation. The implications shocked the doctor. "How long have you been watching people like this?" he asked, and Emma replied simply, "Always." Afterward, Dr. Müller told Heinrich and Greta that their daughter's mind worked like a machine, a condition of neurology rather than something supernatural. But even his clinical explanation could not lessen the dread. 2 days later, Emma calmly announced that on Sunday evening, at exactly 8:47, a fire would erupt in the Zimmerman house, spread to 3 neighboring buildings, and take Mr. Zimmerman's life before the volunteer fire brigade could arrive. As Heinrich listened, that same cold fear crept over him once again, stronger than ever. Emma's calm reply to her mother's horrified question about the fire was as chilling as the prediction itself. She explained that for 12 days she had watched Mr. Zimmerman drink lamp oil mixed with whiskey, purchasing both in amounts far beyond normal use, and that his wife had conveniently left for Chicago, a pattern she had observed in other homes before disasters. The chimney, she added, showed structural damage based on the angle of its smoke and the pattern of soot. And with these data points, she calculated a 93% probability of fire. Greta wept, frightened not by superstition, but by the clinical detachment with which her daughter spoke. Hoping to avert the disaster, Heinrich warned Franz Zimmermann that same evening. But the drunken man laughed off the warning, calling Emma a devil child. Still, some trace of the conversation must have stuck because he promised, slurring, to be careful. Yet on Sunday night, just as Emma had predicted, a dry wind swept in from the west, and at exactly 8:47 flames erupted from the Zimmerman house. The fire spread fast, destroying 3 neighboring homes before the volunteer brigade arrived. Zimmerman's body was found in the kitchen, overcome by the blaze he had tried to fight alone. The exact timing of the fire, as Emma foretold it, was too much for the German quarter to ignore. Witnesses to Heinrich's warning told the story, and fear hardened into open hostility. The Richters were now outcasts, watched in silence as neighbors crossed the street while at the brewery. Conversation died when Heinrich entered a room. Even shopkeepers and Father Kohler, kept their distance. But Emma appeared unaffected, returning to her journal and treating the fire as just another data point. She logged the outcome, adjusted her formulas, and pressed on now, charting multiple variables, creating complex matrices and filling the leather pages with calculations that reached further and further into the future. Greta no longer dared to open it, terrified of what predictions it might hold about those they loved. The little girl who had once been their joy had become a quiet, unfeeling presence. Her voice stripped of warmth, her eyes seeing only patterns. Then came the day in late April when Emma looked up from the window with that same mechanical calm and said, "Mama, something is wrong with the pattern." Greta froze as Emma explained that every Tuesday for 11 weeks, Mrs. Brennan had walked to the rectory at exactly 3:15. But today, she left at 2:47 and headed toward the river. Her steps had shortened by 12%. Her breathing had grown uneven, all signs of acute distress. When Greta, horrified, tried to dismiss the idea, Emma interrupted flatly. There is an 87% chance she intends to end her life. And people who break patterns this drastically act within 4 hours. Her pattern changed 43 minutes ago. Greta fled to the garden, panic in her voice as she called Heinrich, who followed her inside to hear the full account. There was their daughter at the window, head bent over her journal, calmly adding notations about Mrs. Brennan, as if this too were no more than another equation to be solved. When Heinrich asked her what she had observed, Emma looked up, her gray eyes cold, waiting to give her report. Emma explained in her calm, analytical voice that Mrs. Brennan's routine had shifted by exactly 28 minutes, her posture and breathing revealing distress so severe that based on historical patterns of behavior disruption, there was an 87% chance she intended to harm herself, most likely between 5 and 7 that evening. Faced with his daughter's certainty, Heinrich acted on desperation and instinct, hurrying from the house to follow the path Emma described. Down by the river, on the wooden dock where the fishing boats swayed in the current, he found Margaret Brennan staring into the dark water, her eyes swollen with tears. Softly he called her name and approached as though she might break. Startled, she turned her face, collapsing under the weight of shame, confessing in a trembling voice that she could no longer bear the whispers or the disgrace of loving a man forbidden to her. Heinrich, horrified to realize Emma had been right about everything, spoke to her for nearly 2 hours, gently persuading her to step away from the water and assuring her that the judgment of others was not worth her life. When he returned home that evening, exhausted but relieved, he found Emma at the table, coolly recording her final notes in the journal. Mrs. Brennan did not follow through with her plan, she said, adding that the intervention had changed her calculations and that she would need to adjust her formulas for future predictions. Staring at her, Heinrich realized with a sickening clarity that his daughter was no longer just observing events. As they happened, she was anticipating them, studying the misery of others with a detachment that frightened him more than any supernatural explanation. That night, after she had fallen asleep in her narrow bed, he and Greta resolved to leave Milwaukee, convinced they could no longer live in a community where fear and hostility had swallowed them whole. But beneath that resolve was a deeper fear that Emma's mind, extraordinary and strange, was slipping further away from human emotion. They began packing their meager belongings and secret planning to escape before her next prophecy could tear apart more lives. Yet Emma was far from finished. She spent her days hunched over her journal, filling it with numbers, charts, and patterns that no one else could interpret. And as May 1873 began, she made an announcement that shook the household. "Papa," she said one bright spring morning, gray eyes fixed on him, "I need to show you something. My calculations have revealed a pattern that explains everything. Heinrich, heavy with dread, sat across from her as she opened the journal to pages covered in detailed maps and columns of figures that looked like the work of a professional investigator, not an 11-year-old child. For 26 months, she explained, I have recorded the movements of 43 adults in our community. At first, the pattern seemed random, but when analyzed systematically, they revealed correlations that indicate organized criminal activity. Heinrich's blood turned to ice. Emma, what are you saying? Unmoved, she showed him a map of the German quarter marked with precise symbols. 7 men meet secretly every Wednesday at midnight in the basement of Kellner's brewery. I identified them by deviations from normal routines, inconsistencies in their stories, and the evidence of their paths. Mr. Steinberg says he works late but leaves the mill at the same time as the others and takes a back route to avoid the main streets. This has happened without fail for 26 months, except for 3 occasions when illness or family emergencies kept them away. The names written in neat columns made Heinrich's hands tremble. Wilhelm Fber, Franz Kellner Ernst's brother, Hans Zimmermann, Franz's cousin, Otto Steinberg, Klaus Brennan, Gustav Wolf, and Hermann Kruger. Emma, he whispered, how could you possibly know? She answered with the same unsettling composure. I observe everything, Papa. Every night, every movement, every deviation from pattern. Turning to another page, she continued. The meetings themselves are only part of the discovery. My calculations show these men have been stealing systematically from the brewery for 26 months, with estimated losses of $47,000. I detected discrepancies between reported production numbers and the true output I derived from deliveries. Ingredients and waste. The difference revealed theft, and my observations identified the culprits. Heinrich sat frozen, staring at his daughter's neat columns of numbers, understanding at last that her strange, brilliant mind had uncovered far more than their small community was prepared to face, and that this revelation would be the most dangerous one yet. Emma pointed to charts in her journal that traced the behavior of the 7 men with unflinching detail. Each of them, she explained, had begun spending far more money than their modest incomes could justify. Wilhelm Weber had purchased new furniture worth nearly $300, and Steinberg had been sending regular packages of money and goods to relatives in Germany. She had personally observed him at the post office a dozen times, with parcels far too large for ordinary letters. The same pattern of unexplained wealth repeated across all 7. And as Heinrich studied the neat rows of numbers and diagrams, he understood that what his daughter had uncovered was no mere curiosity, but evidence of a criminal conspiracy hidden in plain sight. Then came the revelation that took his breath away. The thefts require access to financial records and brewery security, Emma said in her even clinical tone. My analysis shows that the organizer is Ernst Kellner himself. The word struck Heinrich like a blow. Ernst Kellner, the brewery owner who had already driven their family to the fringes of the community, was, according to Emma's meticulous calculations, the mastermind of a massive theft ring that had been bleeding the breweries for over 2 years. When Heinrich asked if she was sure, Emma calmly answered that her data gave a 96% probability, but then added something worse. Mr. Kellner knows I observe everything. He has been watching me. 3 weeks ago, he came to our house twice at night and stood outside for 17 minutes each time. He suspects I have discovered the truth. In that moment, Heinrich understood with absolute clarity that his daughter's strange gift had made them a target. Closing the journal, Emma fixed him with those unsettling gray eyes and said, "The probability that they will act against us is 84%, with the highest likelihood within the next 72 hours. For the first time, one of Emma's predictions was about their own lives. That evening, Heinrich went to Dr. Mueller under the cover of darkness, carrying the journal like a piece of contraband. The physician studied Emma's charts in stunned silence, the lamplight flickering over pages that revealed not just theft, but a conspiracy so large it was almost beyond belief. "If she is right," he whispered, "this is the largest theft operation in Milwaukee's history. And if Kellner suspects she knows you and your family are in grave danger." He promised to help them flee that very night, using his connections to arrange a false transfer for Heinrich to a brewery in distant Minnesota as their cover. Before dawn, the Richters loaded their few belongings into Muller's wagon, their departure hidden under a moonless sky. As they prepared to leave, Emma made one final, coldly precise observation. In approximately 6 months, the thefts will be discovered by other means. Mr. Kellner will face justice, but 3 of the 7 men will not survive the investigation. The probabilities are clear. Her father shuddered as he lifted her into the wagon. Even as they ran for their lives, she was already calculating the future. Her prediction came true in every detail. By winter, federal investigators exposed the theft ring. Ernst Kellner was arrested and convicted, and 3 of the 7 men died under circumstances no one could explain. But on that dark May morning in 1873, as the wagon rattled out of Milwaukee's German quarter, all Heinrich could think of was how his daughter's extraordinary mind had saved them and destroyed the only home they had ever known. The Richter family vanished before dawn on May 2nd, 1873, leaving behind nothing but whispers. Dr. Mueller told those who asked that they had been summoned back to Bavaria, though no ship records were ever found. In truth, the Richters had started over in Minnesota, in the small town of New Ulm, where Heinrich found work in another brewery, and Greta tried to rebuild a semblance of their old life. But Emma remained the same, filling her journals with charts and observations that marked her apart from the world. For a time, Dr. Mueller kept in touch, reporting that a mathematics professor at a nearby college had taken an interest in Emma's extraordinary abilities. Yet even in her new home, the patterns continued to unfold before her calculating gray eyes. In New Ulm, Emma's unusual abilities drew the attention of Dr. Hermann Weiss, a German-born professor who approached her extraordinary mind not with fear, but with scientific curiosity, helping her focus her skills in ways that might be constructive rather than destructive. But the most remarkable confirmation of Emma's gift came in November of 1873, when Dr. Mueller received a letter from Heinrich describing how her final prediction about the Milwaukee theft ring had come true in every detail. As she had foreseen months earlier, federal investigators uncovered Ernst Kellner's vast embezzlement scheme, leading to his arrest and conviction for stealing more than $50,000 from the city's breweries. Wilhelm Weber Kellner's closest accomplice was found dead in his home in what authorities labeled a suicide, but which many whispered was murder. Otto Steinberg died in a so-called drunken accident, and Hermann Kruger collapsed from a sudden heart attack, whose symptoms, Dr. Mueller quietly noted, were disturbingly consistent with poison. Emma's calculations, made from hundreds of miles away, had been precise to the last detail, including her chilling forecast that several conspirators would not survive the investigation. In the aftermath, Milwaukee's German quarter struggled to recover from the scandal and the heavy scrutiny of federal authorities. But with time, new families moved and abandoned houses were repaired, and the community tried to rebuild itself on more honest foundations. Still, the legend of the pale child with the gray, unblinking eyes, the girl who predicted deaths, uncovered secrets, and dismantled a powerful conspiracy armed only with numbers lived on as whispered folklore. Parents warned their children not to pry too deeply into the lives of others, while neighbors wondered what truths might still be hidden behind their ordinary facades. Even Father Collar, once so certain that Emma's gift was divine, confessed to Dr. Muller that her predictions had shaken his faith, leaving him to wonder whether some knowledge is too dangerous for any human mind to hold, and whether Emma Richter had been sent to them as a blessing or as a curse. Hit that like button to support our content, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss stories like this as we uncover the most unsettling historical mysteries America has to offer. Dr. Muller's last letter to the Richter family arrived in the spring of 1874, nearly a year after they vanished from Milwaukee. In it, he described how life in the German quarter had slowly returned to normal, though the story of Emma and her terrifying predictions still lingered in hushed conversations among the older residents. He also revealed a disturbing detail uncovered by federal investigators during the brewery theft inquiry the journal Hinrich had left behind, as evidence did not just expose Kellner's conspiracy. Its pages contained intricate calculations charting the behavior of dozens of families across the community, predicting marriages, scandals, financial ruin, and even deaths with eerie accuracy. Seasoned investigators trained to see patterns in crime admitted they were both impressed and unnerved by the sophistication of an 11-year-old's analysis. "Your daughter's mind works in ways professionals might envy," Muller wrote. "But I am grateful she is far from Milwaukee. Knowledge like this may be too dangerous for any community." The last trace of Emma in the historical record appears a year later in 1875, in a brief entry from New Ulm College's mathematics department. Professor Hermann Weiss, the scholar who had guided her extraordinary mind, reported that his remarkable pupil had demonstrated unprecedented abilities in statistical analysis and prediction, but that the family had once again decided to move for personal reasons. After that, Emma Richter vanished from history as completely as she had fled Milwaukee that dark May night in 1873. What became of the pale girl who saw patterns where others saw chaos has never been answered. Some scholars believe families with gifted children like Emma deliberately disappeared to protect them from exploitation and fear, while others suggest her abilities may have grown far beyond anything we can document. Her story remains one of the rare cases detailed enough to glimpse the extraordinary scope and implications of such a mind. Today, science might explain Emma's abilities through conditions such as savant syndrome or forms of autism that allow the brain to process information with incredible focus. But in 1873, her skills seemed like something divine or demonic. What do you think? Did we uncover everything, or was there more to Emma Richter than anyone ever discovered? Share your thoughts in the comments below and tell us if you've ever known someone with an extraordinary mind. If you enjoyed this story and want more like it, subscribe, turn on notifications, and share it with a friend who loves mysteries. The case of Emma Richter is a chilling reminder that the scariest truths are not always supernatural. Sometimes they are the cold, relentless product of human observation and mathematical logic. In a world where we think our secrets are safe, there may always be someone who sees the patterns we believe are hidden. Thank you all very much for watching my video until the end. I sincerely appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.